God. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
If you've been following at all what we've been doing with Hyundai Design lately, it's not been about this, what we call a Russian doll syndrome, where we have a family look, really. It's really more about creating different looks for vehicles with sort of similar signature elements and platforms and so forth. So you've seen Santa Fe, you've seen Kona. Today we're talking about, of course, the king chess piece here with the Palisade. When we deal in design, we deal with emotion, we deal with passion. I'm here, honored to be here with you on behalf of my design team in California, as well as the global teams of design. Completely focused, passionate people with regard to trying to infuse and draw out as much character as possible. We get a lot of information from Korea. We get a lot of information from HMA, very important information, but it's a lot. And anytime that we can kind of personalize that information into something that people can take ownership over within the design community, that really helps us build much more character into the design. So I want to share with you one of the tactics I have. By the way, Jim, you'll notice I wrote Palisade here. I correctly spelled it. I'm notorious for not spelling very well, so yesterday I kind of screwed up a few letters. But I want to share a quick story about when we were working with Kona. I asked some of the tactics I used with the designers to try to get a little bit more energy out of them, because we were pretty close with the Kona, but we weren't quite there. And I asked the designer, please just stand, if you will, the character of the car. Act out how you feel that the character of the car should be like on its wheels. And he kind of first went kind of like this, right? And I said, oh, come on, you can do better than that. What is it that you want to say about the car? And then I got him to lean in a little bit further forward and do a little role playing in a way. And finally I got him basically into a 3-point stance with his elbow on his, like a lineman in football, with his elbow on his knee, and it was like, okay, you feel it? He's like, yeah, I get it. Okay, now go draw the car, right? With this one we have personal experience. We can all sort of relate to some of these imagery, and I'm kind of going a little analog here for you. It's like overhead projector in algebra class here, but we put together a poster for the Palisade a while ago, and we do this from time to time, and we captured some images out of the 50s and the 60s of folks using their station wagons going on road trips, and there's just a wonderful optimism and bravery and helpfulness that these vehicles sort of provided over the years. And maybe some of you can relate to some of these images, but these are some of our designers' photographs from the past, driving across country with their families. Some of them weren't even born yet or whatever, but they'll never forget images of bears walking up to their cars or packing the top of the vehicle with a huge duffel bag of equipment or whatever. Here's one of our color and material designers. Their great grandmother is right over here, and this is the whole family on a flatbed going to Durango, Mexico. Here's one of my interior design managers' times in Afghanistan with the 1973 Range Rover. Here's a younger clay modeler, Cole. He's helping his dad, polish up his Suburban and taking care of the car because he knows what the car does. And as families grow, of course, here's one of our design managers, Brad, and his wife out in the desert with their vehicle last year. And then, of course, in the matter of 9 months later, he's got his first kid, and you just sort of never forget these things. But the people don't really change as their families really grow. They still want to do cool things, and this was a way of personalizing things. Julian here with his digging out his dad's car in Mammoth in the snow, he'll never forget that. Liz's car loaded up with beer in the back. And I think everybody can sort of relate to this. I don't know if you can see, but this whole back of the car here is just filled with children. And I know that I had memories of looking out the back window, we were talking earlier, and teasing the car in back of us and so forth. So by bringing this kind of personalization to the design process, I think it kind of infuses a bit more personality, a little bit more ownership into what they're going to do. So I'm going to try to draw this car in a few different views here and describe a bit of what I'd like you guys to look at on your drives a bit later. A little bit more in the profile of the vehicle. Nice stance. it's really important that an SUV have a proper, not so much reliant on the wedge shape of the vehicle, but a little bit more balanced, a little bit more even power to all four wheels. A lot of this has to do with pillar configuration and dash to axle, which is very minimal. Dash to axle is described by the front door shut with regard to the front wheel. And if you have this distance relatively short, that helps solidify and confirm a four-wheel balance to the wheels. When this distance gets a little bit longer, you get a rear-wheel drive kind of proportions, and then it sort of throws things off. We have a kind of gesture to the main character line here that connects the headlight all the way to the tail light. And then we have a separation in the front, which I'll talk about with the DRL. George, I don't think I'm drawing the rear wheel big enough. Nice long wheelbase to the vehicle. What I want to talk about in terms of the C-pillar is its position with regard to sitting atop the rear wheel like a column in a really strong building. You have an integrated spoiler in the rear and a thread-through type of graphic that's going down below in the front. Now, about three things I want you to look at. We have an interlocking theme to the whole vehicle. First, starting with the chrome detail that runs across the top of the vehicle and then comes down and ends here, and then comes along the belt line here, and then kicks up and ends there. We also have the taillight graphic bleeding through to the bottom reflector, and the top of the DRL also piercing and bleeding through to the bottom of the bumper. We also have some smaller details here of this interlocking theme around the rear wheel. And this whole thing kind of contributes to this Rubik's Cube Chinese woodblock puzzle kind of security that the whole car has from front to rear. And this really helps the stability of the vehicle, the robustness of the vehicle, the feeling of safety, optimism, bravery, and helpfulness. Okay. As far as the front is concerned, let's see if I can. You guys all seeing this? Mm-hmm. Start with our Cascade grille. Very wide truck proportion to the grille. Very robust as well. There's a lot of straight lines with tight radii that happen with this grille and the lines in the front of the car. The car doesn't have a whole lot of offsets in the front. It's very modern feeling. There's a few different setbacks where the headlights are, but generally it's a pretty flush front end of the car. This is this piercing DRL light. Now, once was cardinal rule of proportion is the first read of the vehicle. We're seeing more and more the DRLs taking over as the first read in cars from down road. So when you see this vehicle coming at you, one of the first things you're going to see is the grille, of course, but then the daytime running lights that come at you are very iconic. And as they pierce through the bumper right here, we thought that brought a really wonderful sort of uniqueness to the vehicle. The headlight is actually right here. And we have this bull bar down below. early on and then throughout the design process, we regarded this piercing happening right here with the DRL as kind of like an emerging predator out of the water. If you can imagine, when this car comes up in your rearview mirror, you typically see about from where this dotted line is upward. And when it comes up on you, you can see these DRLs piercing through the lower end of the bumper, and it really kind of gives an aggressive presence to the vehicle. There are a couple of different grille sets, but both basically cascade following the outline of the car, this sort of gesture like this. We have a body-mounted rear view mirror, which is super important in terms of visibility. When you're able to alleviate the patch that's at the base of the A-pillar and make that triangle a little bit smaller and get about 35-40 millimeters in between the A-pillar and the mirror, you have a better sense of control through there. It's a small thing, it's a subtle thing, but it's a really important thing. We also, for the first time, opened up the tumble home. This angle here is typically something that designers like to crank over and make smaller and compact and more coupe-like, but for this vehicle, since it's a family vehicle, we opened it up here about 35 millimeters per side. And you're gonna see and experience that, I think, in wonderful detail when you get into the driving of the vehicle. Rear view, same thing. The car's section really comes alive in rear view and rear three-quarter view, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second here. Okay, here we go, Jim. I, S, A, D, E, L. License plate frame here.
Chris, it's a bit off center. Can you redo it?
I gotta get up there. HMA 1, 2, 3. And down through here, you'll see another wonderful garnishment, but the piercing action happens and continues at the rear reflector. The metal piece that's here pierces down and goes outward to a nice stance, and the reflector exists in these quadrants here. Y-spoke wheels on one of the versions of the vehicle. You have a single exhaust onto the one side that sits inside one of 3 scallops that happen in the rear skid plate. So it's a nice little detail, subtle. Today's vehicles, not so much about celebrating smoke coming out of the tailpipe, right? So it's an asymmetrical approach, but it offers a bit of character. Now, typically we have cars that are shoulder cars. Goes out, down, like this. Designers always want wide cars. We all want wide cars. but a lot of times they put too much emphasis in the shoulder and not enough emphasis in what we call the bicep, which exists over the rear, over the tire itself. So typically what happens is you have a pretty large distance between the belt line, which is up here, and the top of the tire, especially in the rear of the car. That real estate right there is really hard to break up. So what we do is we have two ways of doing it. We have the shoulder and we have the bicep. When it's really tall, we try to minimize the shoulder a bit for the sake of the muscle closer to the wheel. This really plants the car a lot more. Designers, sometimes they put too much emphasis on the shoulder of the car, and then you end up with this giant wall going straight down to the wheel, and it looks rather weak. And I think you're going to notice this on the drive when you're getting into that rear section, rear 3/4 kind of view. Look for this nice bulge out right here. So with that, yeah, the Acropolis, the pillar over the rear wheel gives it that really wonderful stance. If it's too far forward of the rear wheel, it looks weak. If it's too far back, it looks weak. When it sits right on top of it, it's a symbol of strength. Here's some of the original sketches. I didn't bring any sketches that were just flat out renderings of the real car. I wanted you guys to see the development of it. You can kind of see the interlocking theme that's happening here. Of course, we have Kona, Santa Fe, and Palisade. We're not doing Russian dolls here. We have some similar themes, but very, very strong differentiation between our headlight and DRL signatures. At one time, it was sort of some people were calling it the crocodile eye, others were calling it the gator eye. I was kind of thinking of it as SEAL Team 6 when they come up out of the water and then the lights and everything like that reflect in the water. Here's some more finished renderings by Mikola, the designer of the exterior. And you can see the chrome garnishment interlocking around the C-pillar and some other areas. Also around the wheel arches, we have a smaller version of what we do with the Kona in the wheel spat area, which also interlocks around the wheel arch. As far as the interior is concerned, I'm just going to show you a couple of sketches and I'll be done. Basically, apropos to the kind of place we're at right now, the serenity of a yacht was really the main theme. And we have some beautiful sketches. I think you're really going to enjoy the interior of this vehicle. It's just magnificently organized in terms of ergonomics and space and fit and finish and color and material. So please enjoy that. We had a lot of fun doing the car and it's a wonderful drive. And with that, I'll hand things over to Mike O'Brien. So thank you very much.